Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of season 2 of the Remembering Muizenberg series. Thank you all for being here. I know that we've already got close to 30 people here live and we're starting on time, as well as I know that hundreds of people will be watching this recording. This is all in anticipation of the centenary celebrations, which begin at the end of this year, 2023, December the 28th. And go for 8 days through the 4th of January 2024. It is really going to be an unbelievable event. I do think that those who cannot make it will be missing out. When I talk about numbers, we'll be receiving numbers like the golden days of Muizenberg that you are just about to talk about. Meals, gatherings of hundreds of people, hundreds, I'm talking about, 500, 600, some of the events. Of old people from Muizenberg, of new people from Muizenberg, of all different walks of life that have frequented Muizenberg over the years. And I will be telling everybody more about that during this month of June. We are right now, we finished the schedule. We're just making the marketing materials to give over to everybody. The end of the year, we will be doing a centenary fund for the future of Muizenberg, to put money into programming and leadership and all different age groups. There are 3,500 Jews approximately in the southern suburbs that we have to cater for. So whatever help we can get from everybody, we will gladly take. And there's just such an amazing energy going on in Muizenberg at the moment. I cannot tell you. We have been full. When I say full, meaning we've been getting minyanim and lots of people to events and shows since last November on a weekly basis. Unbelievable. So it's great to see the success that Muizenberg is going through. And I have no doubt that in the end of the year, it will be take it to the next level. Today, we have not two, but three speakers. Unbelievable. We've got Leonard from London, we've got Mervyn from Sea Point, and we've got David, I think, also from Sea Point today. I know that all of them have spoken before with such different nuances and memories of Muizenberg. I'm going to start off with Leonard from UK, and then we'll go to the local Sea Pointers. Thank you all for being here, and I just hope that you all enjoy the presentation. Okay, Leonard, I'm going to make you the a spotlight so that everybody can hear you, and I think everyone can see you now. Leonard, can you hear us?
Yes, I certainly can.
Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to whatever you have to say. I remember very clearly and very warmly how you spoke about Traplers last time. I walk past that area in Palmer Road all the time, every Shabbat, and I look forward to hear what you have to say today.
Right, so here goes the...
Okay, we can see.
You can see it?
Yes.
I just want to get it up to... there we go. Right.
Okay.
So greetings, everybody. Applying his heroic email powers, Rabbi Newfield twisted my arm and requested a second helping. That's his email. A second helping of my musings about mid-century Muizenberg, adding a suggestion that this time I get personal. But who am I to muse about Muizenberg? I'll present my credentials. I was born yesterday, 84 years ago, in a house called Clontarf in Cromer Road. I had three older sisters, Abra, Tamara, and Rena, here standing close to Muizenberg Pavilion, a building about which we'll muse a little later. In 1941, our family moved from Cromer Road to the topmost end of Mount Road, where my parents, Johnny and Fanny Weinreich, had built a house named Yuval, which is the Hebrew for spring, inspired by the mountain stream filled with frogs that ran through our garden and marked the precise point where the mountain starts to rise. I lived there until I was 22 years old. Now, the lounge at Yuval, and that's my sister Abra at the piano, was the venue for many charity events arranged by my mother, who was an energetic convener, and she often worked with fellow music lover and Muizenberg cousin Lily Herbstein. And following a deep dig in my sock drawer, I uncovered this remnant of my high school blazer badge, proof that I attended both Muizenberg Junior and high schools all the way to matric in 1955. In summer, when the classroom windows were open wide, we could hear the surf and smell the sea. I turned 16 years old in matric and edited the school magazine. And that's me with the magazine committee and our celebratedly pedantic English teacher, Mr. Hillhouse. Every weekday afternoon from the age of 8 until my bar mitzvah, I unwillingly schlepped to Cheder at the Tomatora Hall in Wherry Road. And contrary to my glowing report, I remember very few Hebrew words beyond shulchan, kisei, kelev, and lechem. Hardly helpful when you're dealing with a hard-faced traffic warden in Tel Aviv. And from the age of 12, I sang in the shul choir until my voice broke. And around the same time, I was promoted to leadership of the Springbok Patrol in 2nd Muizenberg Jewish, the only scout troop in the Southern Hemisphere, perhaps the world, actually to label itself Jewish. Unthinkable anywhere except Muizenberg. Now, 2MJ, as the troop was known, had an enviable history of serial victory in the Golden Shield, the Western Cape's #1 scouting trophy. I made lifelong friends in Muizenberg. Henry Brown, a brilliant lawyer who represented Nelson Mandela, after he'd been jailed on Robben Island. And in the early 70s, Henry emigrated to London, and later he instituted an entirely French approach to family mediation, which is being followed now. His engrossing autobiography reveals all. Frank Lazarus was stage struck even then and became an accomplished actor, pianist, composer, and author, appearing at Britain's National Theatre and here as a startled pilot in the movie Superman 1. And if that weren't sufficient, he also co-wrote a hit stage musical in which he starred, collecting top awards in both London and New York. Both Henry and Frank settled in England. We speak and see one another regularly. Even our birthdays are within a month of one another. Now, we were all members of BGOZ, which was an acronym for the Boys and Girls Own Zionist Society, substituting for the lack of Habonim in Muizenberg. Every Friday night, following some mild Zionist political indoctrination, BGOZ encouraged a chaperoned opportunity for young Jewish males to make physical contact with young Jewish females dancing the horror in the open air. And every few weeks in my pre-teens, I sat perched on a board, balanced on a barber's chair to have my hair trimmed at I Shear, possibly the world's most appropriately named hairdresser. Later, I migrated to Norman's more mature barbershop to inhale its distinctive aroma of singed hair, stale cigarette ash, ravaged copies of Outspan magazine, and La Pebra, which was a hair preparation whose specifications were similar to super glue. Now, during summer's daylight hours, the epicenter of our social life was the Snake Park, where I met a gracious young lady named Frances Liebeck, daughter of German Jewish refugees. She changed my life, and last year we celebrated our diamond anniversary. Now, you mentioned, Rabbi, you mentioned my aunt and uncle. There they are. Auntie Lily and Uncle Harry ran Trappler's, Muizenberg's premier grocery store. You might remember my telling you the story last time I appeared on this channel, but my ultimate accolade arrived in 2013 when I was honored to design the poster using a 1930s photograph of my elder sister Avra and my cousin Tess Trappler, and invited to make the launch address for the Memories of Muizenberg exhibition in London. Around 8,000 people have viewed the video on YouTube after searching for Memories of Muizenberg London. So, I am Muizenberg through and through. You can check from my credentials. It courses through my veins and has significantly shaped my view of the world, because it's where at a very early age I learned 2 vital lessons, but more of that later. Instead, let's discuss the uniqueness of Muizenberg. It's a place constrained by mountain, sea, flay, wind, and sometimes blue bottles. And it's possibly, come on, Cape Town's best known, but hardly most typical white suburb. Any fame or notoriety attached to it arrives through geography. For instance, in 1795, it secured a niche by being on False Bay in the Battle of Muizenberg, when the Brits wrested control of the Cape from the Dutch. And if you stroll along the main road, you can still discover cannon left over from the battle outside South Africa's second oldest surviving colonial building. And incidentally, can you name anywhere south of the equator that has anything like Yokohama, which is a national monument made entirely of Japanese paper? As well as the sublime sandy beach and surf, another priceless Muizenberg asset is the Luft, freebie aircon which arrives courtesy of the Southeaster, delivered directly from the South Pole, and previously only partly breathed by a handful of penguins and seals. Muizenberg's Luft was catnip to mining zillionaires like Oppenheimer and Rhodes, sweltering in starched collars in high-felt summer humidity, which meant that as the value of mining shares continued to soar, fashionable architects were commissioned to design opulent summer mansions, and among them, Casa Labia, South Africa's only Venetian-inspired palazzo, constructed for the Italian Count Labia, who happened to be Mussolini's ambassador. Now, the landlords might have been financial wizards, but they were dummies at predicting the future, because they failed to spot the strategic imperative of forging a rail link between Cape Town and Simonstown, which, of course, a vitally important naval port commanding the South Atlantic. This railway not only made Muizenberg more accessible, but also shattered the peace and exclusivity of their serene plutocratic bolt hole. Meanwhile, during summer, the popularity of Muizenberg at the rail's midpoint rocketed. Furthermore, the station was marked by a grand Edwardian edifice, which was declared open 110 years ago on this very day, the 7th of June, 1913. Inevitably, rapacious estate agents spotted a massive bonanza and carved up Muizenberg's empty felt and dunes, and they offered inexpensive plots to all comers, with a very dodgy comparison, the Brighton of South Africa. Muizenberg was a magnet for the droves of Litvak Jews recently arrived in Cape Town after fleeing pogroms and the threat of 20 years' service in Tsar Alexander's infantry. Who could resist the promise of limitless Luft, low prices, and a reassuring absence of marauding Cossack regiments in the South Peninsula? However, a larger proportion of the newly arrived immigrants opted otherwise, and they were lured by the glister and of genuine golden Medina and settled on the distant Witwatersrand, unaware that Transvaal's summer months could be nearly as oppressive as the Tsar Alexander III's regime. And that explains why, come the December holidays, 20,000 children of Israel reenacted the story of Exodus and followed South African Railways pillar of smoke for 1,609 kilometers over 36 uncomfortable hours to satisfy their craving for Luft, the promised Luft. For the 6 weeks surrounding Christmas, the visitors refreshed themselves in False Bay's ozone-flooded atmosphere. And although most of us locals resented the invasion, deep down, we realized those 6 weeks were economic manna from the Transvaal, reinvigorating Muizenberg's economy and social life. We called it the season and discussed little else all year. Hotels were built to deal with the influx, and their Jewish proprietors, driven by an emigre urge to demonstrate patriotism and allegiance to the crown, emblazoned them with names like Alexandra, Imperial, Victoria, and Balmoral. Even the cinema was called Empire. Interestingly, though, nobody called anything Tsar Alexander. However, for all its abundant natural resources, sun, sand, surf, and sea, Muizenberg can never be compared with its US equivalent, the Catskills. Our local hotels, catering for a short 6-week season, were places for fressing and schloffing. There was scant profit in supplying fun. Problem was that come sunset, with Cape Town and Sea Point's flesh pots slightly out of reach, visitors needed slightly more diversions than those offered by the Maccabee Cafe's pinball machines and admittedly delicious kosher hot dogs. Twice weekly changes of program at the Empire relieved some of the pressure, but owing to the stringent observance laws of the time, cinemas were shut on Sundays, so entertainment had to be laid on. And unfortunately for the holidaymakers, the designated managers of fun and frivolity were humorless nudniks from the Cape Town City Council, ill-suited to the task. But fortunately, they were able to call on Muizenberg Pavilion to keep teenagers occupied during the season, particularly on Sunday nights, which explains the appearance of Vic Davis variety concert placards every Sunday evening. Now, this rather curious construction, entrance free, chairs 2 and 6, was a legal dodge to bypass South Africa's strict Lutheran Sunday statutes. If you didn't pay your half a crown for a chair, you couldn't watch the show. Now, veteran band leader Vic Davis's brand of entertainment had long passed its use-by date. So when his weary shtick imploded, Davis was replaced by Dennis Hammond's marginally more up-to-date 10-piece orchestra, but the penny-pinching variety programming remained intact. We had excruciating amateur impersonations of Frankie Lane or Patti Page, or the Russell Brothers guitar duets, Connie Hirsch, a glib comedian, harmonica player, Dudley Sangster, and a very unfunny comic, name fortunately forgotten, who performed a second-hand, politically inept Guzzler's Gin Cod TV commercial, shamelessly ripped off from a Red Skelton movie. But unfortunately, it was indelibly imprinted in my memory. So, excluding the Empire Cinema, it's fair to say that the pavilion was Muizenberg's cultural heart. Leasing cousins like Moishe Oisha pitched cantorial tones across the footlights. We were mesmerized by Max Colley, the hypnotist, and I creased my sides at Izzy Bonn, a leading BBC radio comic. Now and then we had jazz concerts. In 1958, I blew my clarinet with legendary pianist Colin Campbell in a concert called Just Jazz Meets the Ballet. And there was Yiddish theatre, Brian Brooks' theatrical farces, and high-class Am-Dram, directed by Cyril Chozak. Here again, my sister Avron, my cousin Tess, playing in Morning Star in 1948. The pavilion performed double duty as the local communal centre and served as Muizenberg High School's hall for matric dances and prize giving and interminable school concerts dutifully attended by proud but bored parents. It was also venue for charity balls, bring and buy cake sales and political meetings. The local Jewish community hired the pavilion for significant occasions like this reception for Sir Israel Brodie, Chief Rabbi of the British Empire, and his missus. The red arrow points at my parents, two massive Zionist and communal machas, who earlier that evening had hosted the Chief Rabbi's supper at Yuval. I'd even been permitted to sit at the same dining room table on condition I remained stum throughout the meal. But sadly, our pavilion, the People's Palace, is no more. It's a victim of salt corrosion, inclement weather, depleted finances, and the merciless wrecking ball. Gone is the sprawling Edwardian structure with its irritating Art Deco milk bar, where 15% of your milkshake remained in the aluminium mixing flask unserved. Also gone is the polite 1930s tea room, with its parlor palms, pastries, and panorama of False Bay, though the panorama was barely discernible through windows that were scoured by salt and sand. Gone, too, is that little cramped hatch opening onto the snake path, dispensing Doc orange juice for parched throats. Also gone is the drafty penny arcade with its clutch of rust-encrusted games. And gone forever is the movie Snap's wooden hockey on Balmoral Beach, with its display of sun-curled images depicting gangly Jewish adolescents oozing hormones. But most of all, gone is the cavernous auditorium, large enough for a couple of badminton courts and a capacious stage, able to house the municipal orchestra conducted by Mr. Pickerel, performing classical music's greatest hits. Occasionally, in an attempt to add a touch of glamour, the orchestra would add a soloist, explaining why twice a year they conveniently prize veteran concert pianist Anya Polyakov out of retirement. She lived directly opposite the pavilion in a mansion that overlooked a grassy roundabout with a fountain in the middle. Nevertheless, undaunted, Madame Polyakov would summon her chauffeur who dust off the vintage Rolls-Royce with its distinctive license plate CA 10,000 and drive her to the doors of the pavilion, follow the red dots halfway round the roundabout, and not very fast. Now, please excuse me while I change gear. Decades ago, on a visit to Muizenberg, I spotted an item in the window of a junk shop that had once been the extremely genteel, majestic lounge very close to the pavilion and Madame Polyakov's palace. I was gobsmacked. It was a blatant imposter, a varnished slice of pine tree, posing as a souvenir of Muizenberg, a fantasy image crassly executed by somebody who'd never ventured within 1,000 miles of beach road, briefed by somebody else who hadn't the vaguest idea of what or where Muizenberg was. Now, could that be a representation of Muizenberg Mountain? Never. And that strange tree, I'm pretty sure it never flashed its weird foliage at any point between Lakeside and St. James. And insultingly, the pristine sand, lauded by foreign poets, is depicted as brown. This is fake Muse, a false memory of False Bay, which reminds me that while I could gabble for ages, recalling the precise taste, texture, and sensation of Emden's gehackte herring on kichel and a tomato hol b'mitzvah brocha, I won't, and for very good reason. Beware of yesterday. The past is a distorting mirror that corrupts memory. Nostalgia has a capacity for rendering recollections in gentle, misty tones that can mask corrosive issues. Nothing is learned from ignoring the darker side of history. Allow me to make my point more clearly. As a 7-year-old in 1946, the pavilion was where I learnt lesson number 1 in how monstrous human beings could become. Because soon after the Germans surrendered in World War II, Jewish organizations screened the first color movies of Nazi concentration camps, complete with chilling shots of barbed wire and gas ovens, filmed in Germany, Poland, and Czechoslovakia. Genuine, real-life horror films projected at the pavilion in Muizenberg. It was my first exposure to evil, my first experience of personal vulnerability, learning that nasty forces far away had wanted to obliterate me, my family, and my entire tribe. It left a deep and profound impression. And if I'd taken any comfort in imagining that the evil was thousands of miles away from home in war-torn Europe, boy, was I wrong. Because my lesson number 2 was taught 5 minutes walk away from our front door one afternoon on False Bay Station with Nurse, my adored Cape Coloured nanny. Her real name was Sophie Dreyer, a noble and pious woman who assumed firm control of our household on the day of my bris. I knew her as my beloved Nursey, and we were about to catch the suburban train to go shopping at the CTC in Weinberg. And while we were waiting for our train on the platform at False Bay Station, I nabbed a seat on the bench where I'd normally waited when traveling with my mother. And then I asked Nursey why she wouldn't sit down next to me. She pointed to the message, Europeans only, stenciled behind my back, and a calm, measured response provided my second lesson on the subject of racial prejudice. Yet another deep and profound impression. At the age of 7, I'd come to learn that intolerance and injustice existed in the actual place where I lived. And may I remind you that this revelation preceded the official imposition of apartheid. Of course, Muizenberg did eventually fall foul of the effect. Both of those early lessons simmered in my mind for years and began to boil when bigotry became formal government policy, which is why I arrived at a serious conclusion. Generally, politics based on inequality, fear, and hatred don't end well. So by November 1961, I had decided to end my personal Muizenberg season. Abandoning the beach to surfers and seagulls, I packed my bags and headed towards the Duncan Dock to board our MMV Cape Town Castle, seeking a new life in England. And as you might imagine, that's a totally different story. Rabbi Ryan, I hope that's personal enough. And for those of you who've watched and listened, thank you for bearing with me.
Still there?
Yep. Can I get rid of this? Can't find her. No.
They'll be back. We're back.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
Keep going, Leonard. I just lost you for the last 20 seconds.
Right. What do you want me to do?
I think continue where you were at.
That's what it finished.
Oh wow. Okay. So first of all,
end.
Leonard, I missed the last 10 seconds. There was a technical glitch. I don't
dear.
know what was going on there. But that was an unbelievable presentation. Thank you so much. I mean, I love the poetry that you had. The false picture of False Bay. I'd never heard of such a thing, as well as you did a lot of justice personally for myself, because people have spoken about things like Vic Davis concerts, as well as given depictions of the old pavilion,
Yeah.
but I'd actually never seen photos of it.
All right.
And to see a photo, for example, of not just a Vic Davis concert, but of you at the stage with your clarinet, I think it was. What an unbelievable presentation to learn from. And I thank you so much, because I can see you put a lot of effort into it, as you did last time as well. And this will be recorded as almost a personal walk down memory lane, but it's not just personal because it gives so many pictures of what most people, I think, would have experienced in the times that you were here. I will add later a section for comments, and I'm sure there will be a few comments, at least in the chats as well as others. But I thank you so much. That was Leonard Weinreich, everybody from the UK, with a presentation of his upbringing in Muizenberg. We'll see if the recording needs to be edited for the last 10 seconds, but other than the last 10 seconds, it was absolutely fantastic. So thank you, Leonard, so much. And from one, I want to say photographic memory, which I don't know if you officially have, Leonard, but just the way that you can recall such information is just so impressive, to another, and that is Mervyn Rosenberg. Now, I'm not sure if you two were from the same Medina or not, but I'll let Mervyn talk a little bit about that. I'm just going to go into Mervyn and make Mervyn the spotlight. Let me just find, it's under Jackie. So I'm going to ask to unmute. I'm going to make you the spotlight. And thank you so much, Leonard.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mervyn.
Okay. At the original exhibition in 2010 of Memories of Muizenberg, it was so special to so many people. I was involved at the inception and on the committee that helped with it. We never imagined that it would travel the world. I presented at the opening speech at the original exhibition in Cape Town and Johannesburg. And it's quite remarkable, Rabbi, that you're able to get us all together again in honor of the centenary of the shul that's going to happen. So today I'm talking about Muizenberg, how the seaside resort came to be so special. How the Jews, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
How the Jews from all walks of life, from all over the world, came together to holiday, to live, to love, and to enjoy the togetherness of Jewish people, no matter their background or status. And so, welcome to Muizenberg, South Africa's premier holiday resort. It is the turn of the last century. It is summer. It is the holiday season, Muizenberg at its best. The village of Muizenberg is inundated with visitors from the Transvaal, the wealthy, the mining magnates, Cecil John Rhodes, Sammy Marks, Sir A.B. Bailey and the Oppenheimers, to name but a few. All of them have built holiday cottages in Muizenberg. In actual fact, they are mansions, some of which have been designed by Sir Herbert Beitar, who also spends his summer in Muizenberg. Bathing boxes have been built on the sea. The men stroll and discuss business, and the women sit on the beach dressed in the high fashions of the time. The children are playing at the water's edge, fishing and sailing toy boats on the Vlei. Olive Schreiner is also a regular visitor to Muizenberg, as is Rudyard Kipling, the poet who wrote a poem about Muizenberg. White as the sand of Muizenberg, spun before the gale. The locals in Muizenberg are going about their business. They need to sustain themselves for the off-season. Frikkie already selling fresh fish, which has just been trekked. His wife runs the dairy, and on the main road near the railway station is John Brown's general dealer shop. Many hotels have sprung up in the area. The Marine, the Park, and Farmer Peck's is now called the Grand Hotel. Farmer Peck's is a remnant of the past, when Muizenberg was a halfway house to Simonstown. We moved to the 1920s. It is summer. Muizenberg has changed. It is no longer a little village, but a growing town, albeit a suburb. It is the swinging 20s. The people now wear fashionable bathing costumes to the beach. The old hotels are buzzing and the new hotels have sprung up. The big names, the Oppenheimers, Schlesingers, Sir J.B. Robinson, etc., they're still coming to Muizenberg to their holiday homes. Other dignitaries are staying at the new and very posh and modern Muizenberg hotels. There's a wooden pavilion. There's plenty to do in Muizenberg. Dances at night in the hotels, a bandstand next to the pavilion. Surfing has taken off, long 6-foot wooden surfboards. Muizenberg is probably where surfing originated in South Africa. Muizenberg, in spite of this huge growth and influx of people, has still retained its village atmosphere and character. The local inhabitants are a very close-knit community. The wooden pavilion, built in 1911, was demolished in 1929. At the same time, the new pavilion was completed. For a while, both pavilions stood together. The wooden one was closer to the mountain. The new pavilion was spectacular, a spectacular architectural masterpiece designed by Grant. A grand reception hall with seating for 900 people, restaurants, a milky bar. It had everything. A promenade that had been designed in such a way that together with the pavilion and the bathing boxes, a wind-free beach was created. The Snake Park or Snake Pit, whatever you want. We moved to the late 30s, 40s and 50s. We moved to my Muizenberg. There's been a huge influx of Eastern European Jews. There are approximately 600 Jewish families living in Muizenberg. The local industries, the schools and hotels are largely sustained by this community. A magnificent synagogue had been built in 1924. The synagogue is not big enough for the high festivals and summer holidays, and an overflow is needed. The Talmud Torah Hall in Wherry Road. Even then, there's very often only standing room. The services are led by Rabbi Weinberg, Cantor Goldwasser, and the Reverend Frank. Who can ever forget Reverend Frank striding down to the beach in his striped dressing gown at 6 a.m. to swim? Apparently, when it rained, he took an umbrella. He continued to do this every day until he died, no matter what the weather. The shamus is Mr. Brooks. There is a choir that practices every Tuesday night. The choir master is Benny Galansky. Mrs. Goldwasser gives us freshly baked sponge cake and oros for tea. Our remuneration for singing in the shul choir is 1 guinea per year. That's 2 rand and 10 cents. The Cheder teachers are Mr. and Mrs. Schwilensky and Miss Singer. There are 9 classes. That is 3 by 3, 9 classes every afternoon. It is the 50s. The Snake Pit is the beach for teenagers. Parents are supposed to go to the other beaches, such as the Balmoral Beach. It is in the Snake Pit that we play touch rugby and bok. It is here that many romances start. Many of those romances have resulted in marriages or ended in marriages. It is here that we meet the girls and boys from all over the country. Everybody is friendly and having fun. Everybody sits together, no matter what the age. The beach photographer is taking photographs for movie snaps. We are rubbing on Brill cream and olive oil for tanning. We are smoking Texan, Lucky Strike and State Express 35s. We are making dates for a night out to the Bop Floor, to the Milky Bar and the Vic Davis Show, to Norman's Cafe and the Empire Bioscope, and a walk on the promenade, touching the end for good luck. It is January, and the wealthy holidaymakers are in Muizenberg. The butler, wearing his white jacket and red sash, arrives at the beach, followed by an entourage of staff bearing platters filled with freshly fried fish, chicken, and everything for their midday meal. Leipke, the Yiddish-speaking fruit vendor, is selling fruit. Leipke. If you don't remember him, he will remember you and your family and who your girlfriend or your boyfriend was at that time. Leipke's mother was a domestic in a Jewish household in Muizenberg. He grew up speaking Yiddish before he could speak English or Afrikaans. He was as much a part of Jewish Muizenberg as the rabbi. His actual name is Sydney, but he was renamed Leipke due to his stature as an honorary Jew. Until he died in 2012, he never failed to phone me on any of the Yom Tovim. His only regret, he said, was that he was not put into a Jewish old age home at Highlands House. In the last few years of his life, Ronnie Derman and I spent many hours with him in Mitchell's Plain, where he lived with his children. The Empire Bioscope. The manager, Mr. Phillips, always wore a tuxedo and a black bow tie. Whether it was a matinee, Saturday morning double feature, or a Saturday evening show, on Saturday nights we wore a jacket and a tie. The cafes. The Muizenberg of my day did not have restaurants, but honest and unpretentious cafes. After Bioscope, we would stop off at Norman's for a hot dog or a hamburger. Between the Empire and Norman's Cafe was the Maccabi Cafe, owned by Tex. The Maccabi Cafe was in actual fact apparently the first cinema and was renowned for its pinball machines. It was the hangout for the local ducktails. Nobody would walk past. They would cross a street to avoid them. In those magical days, I was a little bit wild and fearless, a little bit of a mashugana, and Cedric Kushner approached me to step in and sort them out. I walked past and fearlessly bumped into the ducktail leader, Pete the Fisherman. We ended up in a big fight between the bathing boxes. After that, everyone walked past the cafe. I have to mention, of course, that Cedric Kushner from Muizenberg became a world-famous boxing promoter. The adults, they all went to the Majestic Cafe, which still exists today. Palmer Road, that was the business centre of Muizenberg. Mr. Schneider was the kosher butcher in Palmer Road. In actual fact, there were two shops. I think it was called Wilkie and Sutton. The one was treif and the other one was kosher. The floor was covered in fresh sawdust. Mr. Schneider was able to traber a hindquarter. That is, he would remove the vein and the hindquarter would become kosher. Mr. Schneider deserved a medal for putting up with my mother and all the other wives. His delivery man rode up and down all day long on his bicycle, delivering meat and returning to exchange it for some real or imaginary deficiency. Both Mr. Schneider and the delivery man now occupy a very special place in heaven. Then there was Trappler's and Mrs. Schneider, who made fresh bagels and sold fish. The Ziffs, who sold fish. The Levenstein's proteins and eggs, poultry and eggs. Mr. Brunt, a deaf mute, was the shoemaker and an absolute whiz on the races. There were two dairies in Palmer Road, the Millers and Mr. Stoch. Mr. Stoch delivered his own milk on a bicycle. There was also a third dairy in York Road. We bought vegetables and fruit from Mr. Rod on the main road, or Mr. Gallius in York Road. Just down the road was Kent's, where you could buy anything. James Morum on the main road sold everything from a pencil to paint, and school uniforms were bought from Dankers. Who can forget the beef on rye and blintzes from Irene Sachs's delicatessen, and right next to them was Sachs Butchery. There were 4 pharmacies in Muizenberg: Shagham's, Reichland's, Tucker's, and Max Rosenberg. The doctors in the area, to name but a few, were Henson, Gordon, Shapiro, Novice, Blumenthal, and Krichler. The dentists were Henderson, Fillion, and Eisman. Before school, we all used to go down to the beach to swim with a cake of soap and take a shower. I can remember the trekking of fish early in the morning and my dad taking home fresh harders, which my mother grilled for breakfast. In those days, one could get fresh galjoen, harders, hottentots, and many more varieties of fish. I can remember the fish cart, the horn blowing, announcing their fresh wares. We had an unspoiled and uncomplicated childhood. I lived in Yarmouth Road. On the corner was the boat house, where the second Muizenberg Jewish Scouts movement held its meetings. Just opposite was, I think it was Levinson or Levenstein, they had the hardware store at the bottom of Palmer Road. If you walked down Yarmouth Road, you would pass the homes of Emden, Singer, Loon, Marcus, Frank, Coleman, Chiat, Glazer, Kay, Hope, Lurie, Michaels, Lockitch, Lazarus, Kushner, Miller, Shapiro, and Oblowitz. At the bottom of Yarmouth Road lived Gus Levine. He was nicknamed Gus Levine. He was one of the characters of Muizenberg. On the top of his car, he had written, "Cut fees Levine." He taught us how to play beach bats. Behind me lived the Castons, Dermans, Silberstein, Garbs, Blumenthals, Apters, Adlers, Musicants, Zabers, and many more. We were all friends. We still are all friends and see each other regularly. My memories of Muizenberg are of a very happy time, of a very close community, a big family of relationships that last to this very day. It is difficult to describe this close relationship to anyone who did not grow up in Muizenberg. Muizenberg was so not because of Muizenberg, but because of the people that lived there and the holiday makers, the camaraderie and love that existed between us, the relationships that were built and still last. It was not a wealthy community. Our parents were generally first-generation South Africans, but it was a rich community, rich with love and respect. We felt blessed. We were living 365 days a year in this special place, a place that existed because of a set of circumstances that came together and will never come together again. A holiday resort built by the British Empire and a set of European immigrants who were arriving in a new country and who adopted this holiday resort, even as the colonials abandoned it and remolded it to their image. But these people are all gone, as are all the aspects that made my youth so wonderful. We have the Berg, we have the lake, the surf and endless sand. We have all those memories of a wonderful childhood, of a wonderful, loving and caring community, and of bonds that have lasted forever.
Thank you, Mervyn. That was wonderful as well. Just add Leonard one right before you. You had a very different presentation in the sense of you didn't give over one picture, but you gave over so many stories with so much detail of neighbors in a street. I can't believe that you can remember all the people who lived in particular streets. And if I get to both of your ages and remember half the details that you both have, I will consider myself a very, very lucky person. Just to comment a little bit before we go into the third speaker, and it's to reference both speeches. Today, Muizenberg Beach, there are still people who walk to the end and touch the end, Mervyn, like they used to at the end. I don't know where they used to touch before, but today it's right at the end of the rocks, as well as opposed to it being an apartheid beach, how I saw a picture, Leonard, I couldn't believe that picture that you showed me with the huts in the background and, you know, only whites. I've never seen such photos. But at the same time, I would argue that Muizenberg is one of the most diverse and best representations of what the new South Africa is. When you come in December, you're going to see lots of people with yarmulkes and tzitzit in the hundreds all across the street, all across the beach, across the whole beach, from Surface Corner all the way to the lifeguards and the river mouth, as well as just generally during the year. You go there and there's going to be a good mix of white people, black people, and colored people all together, living together and in harmony, not hurting each other. So it's a great place. I've even met people who have told me they want to move back to Muizenberg because of this demographic of South Africa. So thank you so much to both of you. Mervyn, you got a comment?
Yes, apropos of what Leonard showed, the Battle of Muizenberg, if you want to, I can just hold it up if you can see it. That's a letter from the Battle of Muizenberg. And here's another one, a letter from just after the Battle of Muizenberg there. Those two letters. Those are two original letters, probably the oldest postage ever from Muizenberg.
Wow. Wow. Well, Mervyn, thank you so much. As most people do know already, but for those who don't, Mervyn's family is one of the oldest families with links to the Muizenberg Shul. I know it goes back many generations. And Mervyn, I know that one of your highlights is still to come and sit in is it your father's seat or your grandfather's seat, or maybe it's both? I'm not sure. And it's just wonderful to see that. It's just wonderful to see that intergenerational love that Leonard had, that you have. And hopefully our next speaker, David, you're off to a big task, because you had Leonard and Mervyn before you, who both did brilliant presentations, but I have no doubt that you have a couple of tricks up your sleeve. So thank you, David, also for being here, and I'll open up for comments at the end. I do know that in the chat section for the previous speakers, you have quite a few comments saying what amazing memories that you provided them. So thank you for that on behalf of the people who are on the chat. I'm going to make David the spotlight. And David, can you hear us?
Yes, very well, thanks.
Okay, great. So go ahead.
Well, hi, everybody. I think just to set the tone, it's great to have sitting with Mervyn, Merle, and Sheila. It's a little bit like a class reunion, and that makes it all the more special. And Leonard, please give my best to my oldest brother, who's always so grateful for your ongoing friendship with you and Henry and Roger Tobacco. But before I actually launch into my slightly different approach, I want to share something. I'm pleased, Mervyn, that you managed to hold back those tears. I could hear you just as you were coming to the end. And I wanted to show this. I hope everybody can see this photo. Do you see that photo? That's a photo of Mervyn doing the high jump. And when I was in matric, I was fortunate, Leonard, also to be editor of the school magazine. And that was one of the photos that appeared. And I often wondered how Mervyn ever managed to get over that pole. I didn't know that he was involved in the high jump. And then when I was watching the recordings, I heard Farrell talking about the thumbtack on the rabbi's chair in the Talmud Torah Hall. And I also heard Mervyn pitching into Brenda Resnick, now known as Batya, about taking something from her bag because her desk was in front of his. Now, I think you should all know that Mervyn made regular visits to Wally Gordon's office. And I have no doubt that it was a result of those regular visits that he learned how to do the high jump. So I just wanted to share that with all of you. Now, my talk today is not about the Muizenberg memories, wonderful as they are. It's to do with the Muizenberg youth movement that I joined and became part of and eventually led, which was Beitar. And it's very interesting when Harry was talking the other day, he mentioned Call Noir, which I think is either the voice of the youth or all the youth, if my Hebrew is correct. And I must say, I'd never heard of that youth movement at all. And Leonard actually referred to Habonim. I wasn't aware that Habonim was active in Muizenberg at all. But I certainly also, like so many of us did, joined the Scouts. Or I suppose for us, it was the Cubs. And it was very interesting to hear everybody talking about the old boathouse. I think Cecil Frankel was our scoutmaster at the time. I can't be sure. But I must say the old boathouse next to the Flay certainly had great memories. It was really when I was approximately 12 years old that I got a call from my cousins in Newlands to come and join a Jewish youth movement called Beitar. And although it's common amongst so many youth movements that this is the place for the chicks, that wasn't actually what drew me to the movement. My aunt was very well established in what was known as the Revisionist Party, and her daughter Jennifer was very much senior part of Cape Town Beitar, where we also had the Melmoth brothers, Herzl and Rayfall. So I used to cycle to Force-Base Station, then take the train to Newlands, get off there, cycle to my cousin's home, and spend the weekend waiting for the Sunday morning meetings, which were fun. They were great. And slowly, I started to, I can't say indoctrinated, but to learn about the national side of Judaism and about Israel and Zionism generally. In 1957, John was involved as well, and we went to our first camp. Now, again, you must bear with me while I try to do what Farrell did very successfully, showing photos on screen. This was East London in 1957, and that was my boot in next to one of the trucks that used to take us to the beach. Machaneh then was really pretty well unchanged. We had proper tents that we slept in, and one of the aspects of being in Beitar was the very orderly fashion in which everything was done. I know that many people in those days used to think of Beitar as being very militaristic, but what's important about that movement was it was very, very disciplined. Anyhow, we went up to East London Machaneh, and the connection to Israel was made very quickly through the shlichim, the emissaries who come from Israel to each of the camps, not just for Beitar, but for all of them, Bnei Akiva and Habonim. We, in fact, had Yechiel Kadishai, who was for nearly 30 years close to Menachem Begin, and eventually became his chief of staff when he finally became prime minister. Beitar itself in Muizenberg started at our home. We were fortunate to have in the back of the house Fairway in Yarmouth Road, which Mervyn's already referred to as one of the families in Yarmouth Road, a large lawn, and we used that as our meeting place, parade ground, and we do the Israeli dancing there, and we used to have the meetings as well. And gradually, as the movement grew, we actually created a ma'on, a get-together place at the original Talmud Torah Hall, which then became the Herzl Hall. And we used to get together there, have our meetings. And again, as the movement grew, we started holding the meetings in the homes of the Chanichim, which comprised many different age groups. And at this point, I'd like to ask Raymond Schulman, who's sitting in Canada at the moment, to unmute himself and join us. Reiki, are you there?
I'm here, David, I'm here.
That's fabulous. I can't see you on this section.
I'm gonna
here, Raymond.
find him and get him on screen.
Thanks, Ryan. I can see someone called Raymond. It's difficult to.
That's me.
So
That's
Raymond,
me.
you need to put your
Yeah,
video
Raymond.
on, Raymond.
That's me.
Thanks. And you just highlight
It's
Raymond.
on.
There you go.
Thanks.
There you go.
Wow.
Go for it.
Wow.
His father.
Wow.
That was never record.
Raymond, over to you.
Incredible.
Over to me. Oh my gosh. Well, firstly, the two presentations about Muizenberg before were absolutely both amazing. And I don't know Leonard, but I do know Mervyn, and hello, Mervyn. David has eloquently sort of introduced very humbly what about Beitar and Muizenberg, but he and John absolutely made that happen. And I think I was recruited around 9 years old, if I can recall. And I do remember going on a Sunday to David's house and learning his Israeli dancing on the back lawn with a couple of my friends. I think Cedric and Gillian Kushner were there. They were neighbors, and I think it was only 2 or 3 or 4 of us. And Beitar, I sort of stayed in Beitar with a few lapses. Literally from 9, 10 years old until I virtually went into the army. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. It was a big part of my life, my teenage life. The support I had from my parents. It had a dual function in terms of from youth, because if you go from 9 to 17, obviously you're going through a lot of changes in your life, becoming a teen. I had my own group of friends, all Muizenberg friends. We did everything that Muizenberg teenagers did. And there was a lot of fun, a lot of going on. But I also had another part of my life, which was Beitar, which I took very, very seriously. And I think mostly because of David, because the kind of effort that he put into developing that movement. And I learned from him. I saw the way he conducted, and I learned how to take meetings and to become a madrich and a leader. And so many life skills I learned through Beitar. The machaneh, the camps, I went to the very last one in East London, David, which I think I was 9 or 10 years old. And I cried for 2 days. And a woman by the name of Naomi Cass from Salisbury, at that time, she took me under her arm and calmed me down. And after that, I had a great time. But I was alone at a camp in East London by myself at a young age, and in a tent that was dirty with 5 other guys, and going to showers with everybody, and going to the toilet with everybody, the bugs. And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing time. But it was also the education, and it was all about the Zionist revisionist movement. We learned so much about the Holocaust. That's where I got my great interest in the Holocaust. And my father was a family who were part of the Holocaust, and that kind of drove me on. But it was amazing that we could go to Kanekim's hounds, and their parents would allow that. To come 10, 11, 12 people to your house in Beitar. They didn't even really understand what it was. But they heard us singing, they saw us dancing, they heard a lot of laughter, and there were always something to eat and drink. And but there was also the serious discussion. And I just think of my own personal, I know I don't have a lot of time there, but being able to stand in front of a group of people, kids who were really 2, 3 years younger than me, not very much younger than me, and lead and conduct that meeting. And I never even really knew what I was doing, but you did it. You just did all that. And I think those kinds of things, without being able to elaborate on a lot of it, helped me in the growth in my life, and still today. So I'm very grateful for Beitar. I'm particularly grateful for John and David, and their parents, who were always so nice when we went there. They were always one cup of tea. And I think that there are many. I think maybe maybe there's some others are going to talk about it, but I think there's an entire generation of young Muizenberg people at the time who, I in fact have a picture, if you can see it here, which, and I don't know if you can, but this is a picture taken of a Cape Beitar seminar in 1966. And you would pretty much recognize everybody here. And David, you're in here too. And so there were over 80 people going to Hohook in Krabo, being led by 16-year-olds, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds who were in control of this. And it was absolutely amazing. And that was what Beitar was really all about. And it thrived for many, many years, and through mostly through the work of David.
Thanks very much, Raymond. It was great to see you again, and
Good to see you too.
to hear that you still remember all those things from Beitar. Just keep watching, because you'll recognize some things that you might have forgotten. Ryan, can I come back? Thank you very much. So really, out of that, out of Beitar, there was such chavashaft. There was such a spirit of Jewishness, and we learned so much. And it was also quite serious. We learned about the Jewish philosophers, the Jewish history, Israeli history, numerous different ideologies. We debated, but a pilpul maybe. There was singing and there was dancing. And here, for instance, we had a number of outings that took place. This, the guys might recognize. The guy with the bottle, Cedric Kushner. Raymond's on the other side. Ian Blumenthal is there. And plus some of the other regular attendees. Cedric, of course, was quite a character. I know Gillian's watching, so I'm sure she'll have something to say about her brother as well. Here was another one of the outings, Andrea Stoch and Elizabeth Kay. Some of you might remember them. And of course, what can be more spirit creating than driving together in a truck when you're off to camp or when you're off to a picnic? That's Alan Pick with his arm hanging out there. So it really was great. And we had numerous seminars that Raymond has already referred to. And they took place, I forget what it's called now. We had our local seminars in Windermere Road at, I don't know, Raymond, maybe you can remember the name, but it's changed hands a number of times. But it's like a small nursery school area there. And once again, we had great times with all the guys. You can see Jeffrey Schneider, Gerald Marcus, to name a few, Colin Goodman, Gillian and Geeta Kay, Alan Pick hanging his head there. It was John, my brother John, saying it was an orphanage that allowed us to use it. Thanks, John. So the seminars themselves were great, but the main the main experience for all the Chanekim every year was to go to Machaneh for 3 weeks. All the youth movements did it. And thank goodness we had the SAR and H, as they used to be known. We had fabulous times on those train trips to PE, primarily PE. And here are some of the shots that Raymond was trying to show you. Just different. I haven't necessarily got the years in the right place, but it gives you a feeling for how many people came from Muizenberg, from up the line towards Cape Town to go and spend 3 fabulous weeks at Port Elizabeth. I mentioned that we were very disciplined in Beitar. It is one of the things that the founder, Jabotinsky, believed in, and it gelled with me, it resonated with me, and this is a typical scene at the Beitar camp when the local rabbi came to bless the camp. There I was with a torch and the other senior madrichim with us. And of course, there's nothing better than sitting around a campfire and singing, clapping hands with those warm flames, keeping us all going. This is something as well that I used to do, playing the piano accordion to keep everybody singing. I must say that the administration of running Beitar and the camps and everything was quite substantial, and I had tremendous help from Stanley Zeeman. Stan is also watching. This is a shot where we were at Cape Town Station. In those days, I was already at varsity. And Stanley, are you there? Because we'd like to just hear a few words from you.
From Stanley.
Stan, is that Stan's iPhone?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's my phone. Yeah.
Ryan,
Can you hear me?
Can you spotlight
Yes, let's
Stanley for a
open.
moment, please?
Sure. Stanley, you need to put your go off mute, Stanley, and also go into video.
Stan, let's hear from you, but that's it.
There you are.
Go for it.
Perfect.
Can you see me? Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, David. Hi to everybody. It's nice seeing Raymond for the first time in many years. I know he's on the other side of the world, probably at an odd hour of the day compared to us. I see a few others from the past. I grew up, when I was born, I lived in Muizenberg until I was about 3 years old. Then the family moved to Bergfleet, which was a new township that was, the houses were being built for ex-servicemen. And my father being one of them, we moved into Muizenberg in about 1950. And in 1959, through David's work and Gillian's work, and Beitar was started in Bergfleet as well, in Maureen Eckewitz's house, if I'm not mistaken. Sandra Eckewitz, today married to Michael Liebrecht, living in Sea Point. It was their house. And then in 1962, we moved back to Muizenberg, and because of Beitar, I was very quickly integrated into the Jewish community in Muizenberg, because being in Bergfleet, there weren't very many Jews, and we very had limited contact with Jewish people in the area. But coming back to Muizenberg, and we became part of one big family in Muizenberg. Our entire family got involved in Beitar, of course, starting with Gillian, who brought us all in with Cedric. Then the Gerson family as well, who also moved back from Bergfleet to Muizenberg. My cousins, Carol, Peter, and David, who all live in Canada right now. My brother Malcolm in San Diego, and Colin in Cape Town. The Zeeman family was quite a big family in the area. We were the Zeemans, the Kushners, the Gersons, and of course everybody will remember Auntie Polly, who had the house on Beach Road opposite the old pavilion. Beitar became a very important part of my life, as David has indicated, and I was involved for about plus minus 10 years, during which I went to about 6 camps in Port Elizabeth, many seminars, was involved in many of the leadership activities, and In 1967, after the Six-Day War broke out, I went as a volunteer to Israel. David, of course, was also there, and a number of other members of Beitar from Muizenberg also went to Israel, where we volunteered for a number of months. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Stanley,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that with us. And it's good to see you again. And thanks for all the help again during our years in Beitar. Thanks very much.
Thanks to you, David. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have been involved.
Thanks,
and
Ryan.
you made a big difference to all our lives.
Thanks, Stan. Okay, so Raymond had mentioned how we used to go to the different homes, and one of our primary objectives was to persuade the parents to allow their children to go to camp for 3 weeks. I mean, the way things are at the moment in our country, you wouldn't think that would ever happen. But in those days, it was fairly straightforward. It was safe. And it never failed to amaze me how many of our Muizenberg parents allowed their children to come to camp with us. It was a huge responsibility when I think about it now. But of course, we never actually thought in those terms at the time. And it was fabulous going up there on the trains and getting involved with Machaneh camping. I just want to add that we also were very involved in the Cape Town Jewish community as a movement. And we had a dance chug. I don't know if you can see it. That's just one shot of the dance chug. Sorry about these little brownie pics, but they're all I had from those years ago. And we used to dance at the senior citizens' homes and at the various events that took place. And then we also put on a concert. Now, Peter, in his presentation, spoke about the Mask Theatre, which was very dear to all of us, a wonderful legacy of the Stern family to Muizenberg. And this is a shot from one of the concerts where Gillian Kushner was about to beat me. She was Fatima, and I was some Arab name, I can't remember it. And Gillian's actually with us. You can see Yael Becker Kum or something. Julie, I don't know what that piece is, but just unmute yourself and give us a few words about what Beitar meant to you.
Well, what's the name, David?
Yael Becker. Sorry, thanks, Ryan.
Is it Yael?
Ken. I mean, yes.
I'm just looking. I don't see Yael. I'm just looking. Give me 1 second. Yael.
She's the only one who's got a
Oh, there in Hebrew. Okay, I got it. It's in Hebrew. Okay, got you. Okay, there you go.
Okay, that's me. Well, to follow on from all your information and photos of Muizenberg, I have to fill some very big shoes there. So I'm going to make my little talk quite short. And just give you an indication what Beitar actually did for me, because for me it was an experience over at least 10 years where I learned about Judaism, I learned about Israel, I learned about leadership, and there was so much to be gained from being in Beitar without having to be involved in the political side. But through Beitar, we became strong Zionists, we became strong Jews, we became a strong community, local community, and a general community, going to seminars in the middle of winter in Johannesburg, and going to camp, and all the fun and games that were involved in the camps in East London and Port Elizabeth, be it lipstick and toothpaste fights and campfires, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful stuff. So I'm just going to switch back to a small little presentation that I put together, very small. Before I do, please, everybody who's given these wonderful photos of Beitar times, I would love to have them, because I need to see all these things. And by the way, Fatima said to Ali, "May the fleas of 1,000 camels sit on your mother's bed." That was the curse. So this is me. Today I am Yael Becker. And the story is that once upon a time in Yarmouth Road, Muizenberg, there was a little girl called Gillian Kushner. She was chubby, aka fat, and as a result, she was very shy. And also in Yarmouth Road was a young lad called David, who was very involved with the Jewish youth movement and passionate about recruiting new kids. That's the background. I was approached and very reluctantly joined Beitar. I think I had to be dragged across the road to David's house. But I learned so many new ideas and ideals, and I became totally involved with Beitar. I went to mid-year seminars, as I said, and year-end camps, and I rose in the ranks. I also became a more confident and outgoing person with strong Zionist ideals. And of course, I came to Israel as a volunteer in 1969 and made Aliyah a year later. I have 4 children, 3 living in Israel and 1 traveling in the world. And after living in the Arava desert for almost 10 years, together with my dog, Nikki, who really needs to go to the loo, I moved to Pardes Chana near my daughter. And currently I am a Hebrew to English translator, and I live happily ever after. And thank you so much for this event.
Thanks, Gillian. Yael, Tadaba. And it's just great to hear from you. It's so exciting when we have had members of the community who have made Aliyah. I mean, after all, that is the objective. I suppose it's one aspect of Beitar that I haven't personally fulfilled, but at least my son is there. He's an Oleh, and that makes me happy. And we have plenty of our family who have also made that trip, made Aliyah. I just quickly want to throw in that because it's memories of the youth movement, that I also developed so much from Beitar, my own personal development, personal growth, and I found huge resonance with the organizational experiences that I had, which actually then assisted me throughout my life and my marketing career, where I don't need to go into all of that. I'd like to say that one of the greatest highlights for me, and Stanley mentioned it, was going to, as a mitnadev, as a volunteer in the 67 war. There were many of us who went there. We were primarily based in Kibbutz Dafna. I went for 6 months, coming from the Britain side of things, because I was working my way around Europe at the time. And this was standard practice, working in the fields. And then they gave me a little bit more achriyut, a bit more responsibility, because I could speak Hebrew. And soon we were going on the tractor into the fields. I remember I contributed to the growing of an entire potato field, and then also grew an entire field of millies, and that was really very heartwarming. I think this photo that I wanted to show you now wraps up the excitement that I had when I was there. It's sitting on a tank, a Syrian tank up on the Golan Heights, because Kibbutz Daphne was right near the border with Syria. They used to shoot on the Israelis from high above on the Golan Heights. And after the 67 war, the situation was reversed. So from all of that, and I had to show you this last photograph through all the cultural activities in Beitar. Who would think that guys who would play rugby and cricket, etc., would get involved in dancing? The tall guy at the back there, for some of you might recognize him, is Roger Kay. And even Raymond, you know, it wasn't the done thing to be out there doing Israeli dancing when you were a Muizenberg teenager down at the beach and surfing. But it formed us, and it gave us all huge individual confidence. And having gone through all of that and trying to convey to you some of the memories that I and my colleagues have had, I want to end by showing you the last photo of the guy who really made it work for me in Beitar, because it started with my cousin Jennifer. She handed over to my brother John, and it was John who handed over to me. And I'd just like John now to take over from me. And after he has spoken, we will end my presentation at 5:30 per Ryan's timing. So Ryan, if you'd please bring John into the picture, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, John Lazarus.
Hi, everybody. As David said, he's asked me recently to talk of the impact of Beitar on my life. That was very recent.
John, you're very soft.
Oh, I don't know why. Can you hear me better now?
Yep.
Yeah, just talk maybe a little bit louder. That's all, John.
I'll do my best. Right.
There we go.
Yeah.
And tip your screen a bit so that we can see your face completely.
Yeah, man.
Tip your screen towards you.
I see what they mean, that at Beitar they were disciplined, David.
I'm just about falling into the screen. All right.
Okay, enough of that. Sit back a little bit so we can see you better.
Okay, so I apologize for any duplication for what some of the other Beitarniks have said. I was introduced to Beitar by my dear cousin Jenny Chesler, and through working together, we became very close, even though she lived in Newlands. The Melmoth brothers came from Rhodesia to UCT and started a group for teenagers on Friday nights in the Cheslers' home. Going there became the highlight of my weekly life. And it's funny having heard it from David now, because here I am in my 80s and he is in his late 70s. And I never knew that was exactly what I felt. We actually didn't exchange those words. Going there became the highlight of my weekly life. We learned, we danced, we sang, and once memorably, a fly flew into my mouth in the middle of some enthusiastic singing, and I choked. But since then, nobody has ever been able to stop me singing despite my having a lousy voice. I remember telling my parents that our Beitar meetings were about the things that matter. I was 14. You know, it was a formative age, and not a feeling that I had about much at school. Our discussions had substance. We learned about our identity, the history of our people, the struggle to establish the State of Israel, and we discussed morality, ideology, and different kinds of society. In South Africa, this was the period when the Nats were consolidating their power and each year or so introducing another appalling piece of repression. Politics, South African politics, was stifling. I should mention that many of us Beitarim were very hostile to the government and debated intensely about the role Jews should take against apartheid and the whole horrific system. Sadly, many of the adults were terrified we'd make trouble. Now, Beitar gave me from that early stage a sense of my place in society, responsibility, which led me to study sociology at UCT along with other subjects. It was the foundation, or built on the foundation that for that which came from our parents. I started a group of younger kids, we call them the Chashmonayim, which included Gillian and Cedric Kushner. Hi, Gillian, wonderful to see you. And Raymond Schulman, I think. Raymond, you are instantly recognizable when I saw your picture right at the beginning. And a group, later a group of older teenagers, we started more of a discussion group, including Cecily Lifshitz and Sheila and Roger Kay. Roger still, when he comes to London, always arranges to meet me. He comes from Sydney, and he always calls me his madrich. But although Beitar grew, Habonim was a much bigger movement. This still causes a slight frisson with my current dentist, who came from Rondebosch and was in Habonim. But no hard feelings, because I was recommended to him by my previous dentist, who was a Beitari himself. And the one before that was Dudley Friedman of, I think it was Wherry Road or Clevedon Road, but you get the idea. By the way, Yarmouth Road was a shtetl, because it seems like Mervyn Rosenberg was there, the Lazaruses, the Kushners, and Rabbi and Reverend Frank, too. He lived there. This Beitar group that we were part of was a minority group, proud and united. Beitar gave us the ability to be part of a minority, very important in South Africa, never to go with the flow automatically or jump on the bandwagon. We learned to appreciate all kinds of people, and it gave us the most wonderful friends at that formative time. We were friends because we were part of an endeavor of signal importance in the wider Jewish world, an endeavor formed and fostered by Jabotinsky and Menachem Begin, which unfortunately these days has been entirely betrayed by the would-be dictator Netanyahu, a pygmy compared to the great founders of the movement. Being a madrich and eventually Rosh Hadracha for the South African movement was the foundation of my life as a teacher. So if you're talking, David, about what Beitar did for me, let me tell you that teaching turned out to be my vocation. I have taught and still teach people of all ages and abilities, both at home and online, and love it. I think David would rightly say, as I sometimes say, I'm a teacher because I like to be bossy and tell people what to do. But there's a bit more to it than that. You could say my work in Beitar was an early outlet for this drive of teaching, but Beitar also rewarded and developed it and gave me the scope to do more. In terms of teaching classes at school, I think any success I had derived from my relating to the kids in some ways like a madrich. Of my 4 children, 2 are academics whose teaching is a joy for me to see, and the third is a highly effective maths teacher online, and again seeing him and hearing him teach gives me real joy. For various reasons, I never made Aliyah, though there were 2 attempts, but my wife Shelley from Gardens and Oranges, she and I love Israel, and our 2 boys have made Aliyah. And when I'm in Israel, I always see my nephew Dallin too. The line for all this comes from Beitar. So 2 final statements. One hugely important personal thing, David would not be expecting this. It was actually through Beitar that I discovered my younger brother, David. As a typically self-involved teenager, I hadn't been a particularly nice older brother to him, having initially more in common with our older brother, Frank. But as I became the senior leader of Beitar in Cape Town and eventually Rosh of the annual Machaneh, it felt entirely natural to turn to David as the best person to depend on. He was absolutely, I was Rosh for 1 year, and then I moved on. David was absolutely loyal, had a wonderfully engaging way with people of all ages, was a brilliant organizer, and 100% reliable. We ran a successful Machaneh in Port Elizabeth, I think it was 1961-62, and he was my right-hand man, my Rosh Irgunit. Without his superb support, it would have been a lesser achievement for all 300 of the kids at that camp and for me. But now the final important thing, everything I've said now was made possible because of our beloved Muizenberg, the place and the people. Muizenberg was a true community. There were disagreements and enmities and foibles, of course. That's community life. But there was also so much that we all shared, so much we appreciated. Beitar was a smaller community within Muizenberg's wider one, and it thrived because it was accepted, tolerated, and freely welcomed by the other Jews and many non-Jews in Muizenberg. So my Beitar story and its impact on my life is really a hymn to Muizenberg.
Thanks, John. It's great seeing you, and Frank's there as well. Everybody, you might know, well, Frank, of course, has been writing his various articles for the Muses Megillah. So we're going to end the presentation now with a song. It's called Muizenberg. It's Frank's lyrics, but the tune is Carolina in the Morning, and the video will show my nephew, John's son, singing it. I invite all of you to sit back, listen to the song, and certainly the older ones of us will recognize that song well. Frank, this is the moment we've been waiting for. It's great to see you there. Please, Ryan, click the button.
So you ready for it, David?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, here we go. Where's the play button? Hold on. I've just lost the play button somehow. Play. Sorry, one moment. I'm just reloading it.
Strolling on the prom is simply paradise.com when you're in Muizenberg. I would give $1 million just to circle the pavilion back in Muizenberg. Is there sand that's whiter? Is there sea more mild? Where does the sun shine brighter? Where is the wind more wild? Who designs surprises like the way the mountain rises over Muizenberg? God is at the throttle when you're dodging each blue bottle back in Muizenberg. If there was a Wizard of Oz to whisk me away, I'd cross the bridge and jump in the flay. The air would taste like wine again. The empire would be mine again in Muizenberg.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Micha. Thanks, everybody. It was unfortunate that the sound was rather low, so you couldn't catch the lyrics. But I think it would be very, yeah, I know what's going to happen. When we have our centenary, Ryan, we will develop that song. And we'll make the lyrics available to everybody so that they can understand. But I thought that Micha's delivery deserved being shown to everybody. Thanks. That's all from me. Ciao.
Thank you, David, so much. Thank you to all the speakers as well, coming in from all over the world. I didn't expect that. David surprised me with that one, and what a beautiful surprise it was, David, just listening to people. And I myself wasn't a Beitari. I did go to Habonim and Bnei Akiva, but I knew lots of my friends who went to Beitar, and I think similar stories over there. I just want to read a couple of chats that came up over here, and then I think we'll end off. Number one, there was a lot of information here about saying thank you for the talks. So I love seeing all the pics. That was Angela Batlian to Leonard's talk. Thank you for all the lovely talk. Going on, let me see, how do I scroll down here? Fake news, love it. Thank you, Lenny. Wonderful memories there. Love chocolate milkshakes at the pavilion on a Sunday. Can't be beaten. That was all to the first talk. Then we have Colin Shapiro. Hi, Merle. Thank you so much, Rabbi Ryan, Leonard, and Mervyn. Wonderful abiding memories. Beautiful Mervyn. Beautiful Mervyn. Thank you so much from Gerald Seftel. Thank you, Mervyn. I thoroughly enjoyed your talk. Mervyn in Dartmouth. We had also the Ebels. Mrs. Ebel was an Emden, I think. Leonard Weinreich had to leave early, but he said thank you. Gerald Seftel said, Kol HaNoar was Nathan Frank's movement. Colin Shapiro said to everybody, Beitaris, I don't know if you know what this is, Megovri kavon v'afar, some type of expression in Hebrew, which I'm not familiar with, but maybe, David, you can tell us what that is. John Lazarus, it was an orphanage that allowed us to use it in Muizenberg. And then just a reminder from somebody that this Sunday is a Jewish report presentation in South Africa of the volunteers in the 6-Day War. I wonder if some of you will feature over there. And then lastly,
not the
I
6th
just wrote
War, Ryan, for the War of Independence, 1948.
Oh, sorry, it's the War of Independence. Okay. Okay. And lastly, I just added that if you are not on the Muizenberg database, you don't receive the Megillah by email once a month, please email muizenberg.shul@gmail.com so we can get you on that information and send you all the details that are going on for the end of the year. David and Mervyn, I'm going to spotlight you both and then see if anyone's got any closing thoughts. If anyone does want to say anything to either of them, now's your time to unmute yourselves, please, and just identify who you are and say something. But other than that, I'm going to ask if there's any closing thoughts for Mervyn and David. I'm going to start off with Mervyn. I know it's Jackie over here. I'm just looking for you. Okay, I can't find it at the moment. So David, thank you so much once again. Do you have any closing thoughts, David?
No, just that I'm embarrassed that I couldn't translate the Hebrew that Colin was saying. If he's there, maybe he could just say what it is in English.
We've got from Penny saying, love the song and the singer. David, don't worry about the volume because people could turn up the volume on their computer if they couldn't hear it. And just trying to think if I can find Colin here. I'm not sure. Anyways, the recording for this will be put out in a week's time. We have one last bonus episode with Gerald Musikanth and Marlene Stanger, I believe, from San Diego, California. Gerald lives across the road from me, so I know where he lives. And that will be the last conclusion of this 5-part series of Remembering Muizenberg. I thought the first series was good. I think this series even topped that. So well done today once more to Leonard Weinreich, as well as to Mervyn Rosenberg and to David Lazarus for each their own special and unique presentations. I learned a fortune in all three of them, and I enjoyed all three of them. I'm sure that everyone else did as well. This video will be seen by hundreds of people around the world and put on YouTube. So thank you for the 3 presentations that have been done. Thank you so, so much. Everyone, see you at the end of the year at the centenary. Look forward and at least be in touch before that, muizenberg.shaw@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone.